It is time to be very real with all of you. This is the 9th episode of that storytelling podcast, and I want to be really open and transparent about how much work it takes, how I actually film and edit my videos, and what it's like to run a business at the same time as having a YouTube channel and a podcast. Over the past 2 months, I've taken a step back from sharing my daily experience in my business, and that's because I've been putting so much energy into this podcast, and I wanted the first set of episodes to be as much about storytelling as possible, because I know that these first few episodes are the ones that people are going to return to the most. So I've stopped documenting my process and treating my social media accounts as a diary. If you've been following me on Instagram for a while, you'll know that I'm very honest about what is and isn't working for me. So you can scroll all the way back through my Instagram and watch my entire journey and see how I have grown personally in my business. The whole reason that I started this podcast is so that I would have more space to talk about what's really going on inside of my business and share even more behind the scenes with all of you. And this week, I realized that it is time to go back to the basics and to do what I do best, which is to tell you what it's really like in my business right now. And things have changed a lot since I started this podcast. This is that storytelling podcast, and you're going to get the full story behind my business. So get comfy, go for a walk, put in your headphones, and let's get started. Before I started my podcast, I was very committed to creating Instagram content every single day, and I still am. I still post every day, even on weekends. I try my absolute hardest not to miss a day, and I've created systems for myself that make that a little bit easier by repurposing content and using static posts every other day. So it would take me 45 minutes to an hour to create a really good piece of content with a solid story in the caption. And then I was also teaching on Tuesdays and coaching on Thursdays. So I would spend a big chunk of Monday and Tuesday preparing for my training, and then I would coach on Thursdays and prepare for other things going on in my business, like challenges and writing newsletters and admin work that needed to be done. And that felt super manageable. And when I started this podcast, I knew that it was going to take up a significant chunk of my time. I was prepared to invest that time to get my podcast off the ground, monetize my YouTube channel, and just see where the whole thing might take me. And I knew that I would be doing it completely by myself for at least the first couple of months. And so my schedule has changed a lot. I'm still preparing for my trainings on Monday and Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, I script my podcast in the morning and I film in the afternoon. And then on Thursdays, I edit the podcast. And Friday mornings, I usually have some final touches to put on the podcast. I do the graphics, I write the descriptions, the titles, I create the thumbnails, and I publish it on all of the platforms by 12 p.m. on Friday. Then I have the Storytelling That Sells Challenge, which I do every month live on Zoom with a large group of students. And I coach for an hour and then I train for an hour. So during those weeks, I'm on Zoom for an extra 5 to 7 hours, depending on how big the challenge is that month. And then I'm in the Facebook group responding to comments and questions and commenting on the homework. And so rather than having the second half of the week to catch up on everything that I need to work on, I am going full tilt on my podcast for the rest of the week. And to be completely honest, this has made my business feel a lot harder. If I was on level 1 or 2 of the video game before, I feel like I'm on level 5 or 6 right now. It's not that the work is necessarily difficult. It's just that there is a large volume of work to be done every week, and I really need to be on my game in order to get it all done. I know that this is a lot. I know that I'm overworking myself. I'm very conscious of it. I'm feeling the effects of working so rigorously for 9 weeks straight. But my mindset is good because I know that this is a temporary period of growth where I'm doing a new thing. It feels hard and I need to figure out which pieces I can outsource to other people. I'm also aware of the fact that I didn't take a break during Christmas, which made things exceptionally difficult. My daughter's daycare was closed for 2 weeks and we had plans every single day from December 22nd until January 1st. This was the first year that our daughter could really understand what Christmas was all about, and we wanted her to experience all of it. And it wasn't just us. Our daughter has a cousin who's the same age as her, and this is the first year for our extended family that there are 2 little kids who understand Christmas. And so the magic of Christmas this year was next level. But at the same time, this YouTube channel was just starting to pick up. And I know that just because the calendar says it's time to take a 2-week break doesn't always mean that it's the best time to take a 2-week break. And I still had plenty of energy. When I'm fired up and excited about something that I'm working on, you can't stop me from working on it. And so I still woke up at 4 a.m. every day during the holidays, even on Christmas morning, which I know is crazy, but it was actually a really beautiful time. On Christmas morning, I was editing my podcast with the Christmas tree lit up and the fire on. And when I heard my daughter stirring in her room at 6 a.m., I slammed my laptop shut. I grabbed my phone and I was able to capture those first moments when she stepped out of her room and saw the presents. And it was just a really special moment. And I'll always remember this Christmas when she was so small. And at the same time, I was building this thing that was so meaningful to me. And I was planting the seeds for our future. It's the end of January now. My account has grown to almost 3,000 followers now. And all of my videos have far surpassed my expectations for views by this point. And I've monetized my account, which I am super proud of. It's very clear to me that what I'm doing is resonating with people, it's helping people, and I see the evidence of that every day in the comments. I also have had way more people in my challenge than I have ever had in the past. I had 80 people in my last challenge, and the most I've ever had before that was 50. And I haven't done anything different to promote my challenge aside from starting this YouTube channel. So I can really see that I'm reaching a new audience of ideal customers and I'm bringing them into my world, and my business is growing as a direct result of the effort that I'm putting into my podcast and my YouTube channel. I've had a lot of people reach out to me and say, I want to start a YouTube channel because of you. I see the growth that it is causing in your business, and I'm so inspired and I want to do the same thing. And I don't want to discourage anybody from doing that. In fact, I'm going to tell you how to start a podcast in 24 hours without overthinking it later in this video. But I also feel compelled to tell people what it has really been like for me behind the scenes. I'm very aware of how social media can distort our perception of things, which is why I'm so passionate about documenting my process, because all you see on my Instagram stories right now is the highlight reel. I haven't had a chance to sit down and tell my audience what my workflow actually looks like and how I get the results that I've been getting. Of course, storytelling is a huge part of it. If I had to choose one reason why my account is doing so well and it's having such a positive impact on my business, it's because I'm telling stories that resonate with my ideal customer, educate, and sell the payoff of working with me at the same time. That is my entire storytelling framework in a nutshell. And that's exactly what I teach inside of my storytelling challenge. If you take one thing away from this video, it's that stories can take your content to the next level. So absolutely use storytelling to start a YouTube channel, but also know that it is really different from creating short form content. I find it freeing to be able to sit in front of a camera and talk for an hour and then edit it down into something really valuable. I really needed the space to share a full thought through to completion, because you can't really do that in short form content, but I'm also realistic about the amount of time that I can actually put into these videos every week. Every video is about 60% of what I truly want to do. There is so much more that I wish I could put into these videos. I wish I could spend more time on the scripts. I wish I could film more B-roll. I wish I could add more graphics. I want to do more vlogging. I want to show you more of my life. I know that there's a flood of ideas and content just waiting on the other side to come through when I get over this hump of learning and implementing consistently. And that's the thing about starting a new project quickly and doing it messy. You have to be okay with knowing that there's so much more you could do if you only had a little bit more resources, if you had the better camera, if you had the better mic, but it doesn't matter. You just start messy, you do it anyway, and you know in the back of your mind that whatever little wins you're seeing from the effort that you're putting in now is going to be magnified when you finally have those resources that you need to bring your full vision to life. But none of that will happen if you don't just start and do it messy. I really did start this podcast messy. I started it in 24 hours. I talked about the specific steps that I took to start my podcast in a previous video, all about how I set big goals and actually follow them through to completion. If you haven't watched that video yet, I'll link it here so that you can check it out and see how I went from thinking I should probably start a podcast to actually starting this podcast and making it happen. But there's one piece of that story that I didn't mention, and it's that I actually recorded the first episode 2 times before I was ready to hit publish. And if you watched my previous video, you know that I work in 12-week periods to accomplish big goals. And I set the goal of starting a podcast at the very end of August, early September, which means that my podcast needed to be up and running by the end of November. And I published episode 1 of that storytelling podcast on November 29th, which means I pushed it until the very last moment of that 12-week period, which is not ideal. That's really not how you're supposed to do it. And that's not how I usually operate. Every time I would record episode 1, I would find something wrong with it. I would want to change the name of the podcast, which would mean that I needed to re-record the intro, which meant that I needed to redo the whole episode because there's no way that I could look the exact same. Or I would get the video onto my computer and think, I hate the way I'm sitting. I thought that I needed to do a brand shoot. I thought that I needed someone to design cover art for me. I thought that I needed somebody to write music for the intro and the outro. I had so many reasons for why this project was so much bigger than it actually was, and it was keeping me stuck. And looking back, I can see that none of that is true. I absolutely could have changed the name. I could have sat in a different position for episode 2 and nobody would have cared. What really mattered was the value that I was providing in each episode. And so as the end of November crept closer and closer and closer, I realized that I needed to implement the 24-hour rule. The 24-hour rule is exactly what it sounds like. It means that you need to get the project done in 24 hours, maybe 48, but 24 hours is ideal. So on November 28th, I decided that I was going to launch my podcast in 24 hours. Not meeting my 12-week goal was not an option. So I woke up at 4 a.m. and I scripted that podcast. I chose the name, That Storytelling Podcast, which I actually loved today. It was a great choice. I created the artwork for the podcast. I filmed the podcast that same day. I started editing it that afternoon. And the next morning, I wrote the descriptions and the titles, and I created the thumbnails, and I uploaded it into Spotify for Creators. And I closed my laptop, put it in my bag, and got in the car with my husband for our anniversary trip because November 30th is my anniversary. It's the day that I got married. It's also the day that my husband and I went on our first date, which was 10 years ago. And we had plans to go out for a fancy dinner and spend the night at a spa nearby. And so I knew that my podcast had to be in the can, ready to be published in the morning on Thursday, November 29th. Otherwise, it was not going to get done. And I did it. I was so excited when I got into the car. I had this weight lift off of my body. I had done the thing that I said I was going to do, and there is nothing better than that feeling. I could talk for an hour about how I used to think that I wanted to work as little as possible. But what I actually wanted was that feeling. I wanted the feeling of working really, really hard on something that I cared about and fulfilled my true potential. And then I wanted to close my laptop and be done with work and go enjoy my life with people who I love the most. I will also never forget waking up the next morning to physically hit publish on my first episode, only to realize that I had uploaded the wrong file. There were no graphics on this video, and it wasn't a big deal because I had the correct file on my computer, but it was a huge file. It was in 4K, it was crisp, it was beautiful, and I didn't want to sacrifice on quality. And of course, the hotel Wi-Fi was not nearly strong enough. And so what I ended up doing is tethering my phone to my computer on our car ride home. And luckily, I have a ton of data on my cell phone plan, and I just let that thing upload for close to 2 hours, and it finally went in and I hit publish from the car. I can't even believe that that worked, but I got the thing done when I said I was going to do it with 1 day to spare. And of course, that was just the beginning of the story. From that day on, I needed to create a new episode every week and hit publish every Friday by noon. And I have done that consistently every week. A lot of you have been asking what my setup looks like, so I'll show it to you right now. This is my setup right here. It's very, very simple. I have this arm that is clamped to my desk, which can hold 3 different things, and I can add more arms to it if I want to. I have my camera set up here at the perfect height for my eyes, and it doesn't move. So all I have to do is screw my camera onto that spot, and it's always in the exact same place, and I don't have to worry about setting up a tripod. And then of course I have my microphone on this one, and I have a spot for a light up there. That's just like a dinky little panel light, but there's a connector to put a heavier light, which I will add in the future. I just don't really need it very much because I have windows right here, which is the most ideal type of lighting. Because I have such great lighting in this space, it simplifies my shooting setup. This is really all you need: a window with good light, a camera that can shoot in 4K, and some kind of microphone. I could just as easily put my new iPhone onto this exact same spot, put it in 4K mode, and record excellent quality video. Once my video is filmed and it's on my computer, on a hard drive, and ready to go, I pop it into Descript, which is an amazing platform that turns your video into a transcript, and then you can edit the video based on the transcript, just like you would edit any other Word document. It saves so much time on editing. This one tool is the reason why I'm able to publish a podcast every week without hiring an editor. I'm fairly certain that I wouldn't be able to do this without this technology. And I would love to create a tutorial for all of you about how to use Descript, but Vanessa Lau has done God's work and already created this video for us. And there's no way I can create a better video than she has. So I'm just going to link it below. It's the link that I send to everyone in my DMs when they ask me how I edit my videos. It's the same workflow that I follow. I use all of the same tools. And she even showed me some new things that I didn't know about. Thank you, Vanessa Lau. Love you. Once my podcast and my video is edited and I'm happy with it, I have added the graphics, the music, the B-roll, the text on screen. I've exported it. It's ready to go. I also need to create the title, the thumbnail, and the description. I create my thumbnails myself. I honestly don't put a ton of thought into them right now because I'm not really in the stage where I have the bandwidth to focus on strategy. I'm really focused on consistency and just getting this video out every week. So I've chosen a style that I like and seems to work for me. And I have a template in Canva and I just replicate it and play around with it each week to make it a little bit different. And I work with ChatGPT to find the keywords that are going to be best for my video. And I do this by giving it as much instruction and information as possible to do a really good job for me. So what I do is I export the transcript of my video from Descript. You just click export and then transcript, and it will give you a Word document with your entire video transcribed. I copy that into ChatGPT and I start off by giving it a really clear prompt. I say, this is the transcript from the latest episode of That Storytelling Podcast. You are my YouTube consultant. I want your help creating assets for YouTube that are optimized to attract new viewers, specifically entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs. And I click enter. And it analyzes everything and says, okay, I am prepared to help you. What can I do for you? The first thing I ask it is to create a list of SEO keywords for my ideal customer based on this episode. And then it will give me a list of 20 or 30 SEO keywords, and I'll just read them and make sure that ChatGPT is understanding my episode, that it is remembering my ideal customer well, and that it really has the right context for the work that we're going to do together. Once I know that it's thinking correctly, I'll say, okay, great. The first thing we need to do is think of the words that will appear on the thumbnail. And I will remind it that my goal is to attract as many ideal customers to click on the video as possible. And it will give me a list of options for titles to put on the thumbnail. And then I'll look at them. I'll kind of choose 1 or 2 that I like. And then I might even plug that into YouTube's AI tool to see how it performs, because YouTube's AI will rank the title and give you thumbnail options. It's not the best tool, but it doesn't hurt to see how those keywords actually perform on YouTube. So then I'll choose the words that I want to use. I will arrange them and design them in a way that looks pleasing to my eye. And then Vanessa Lau taught me this trick. I will export the thumbnail. I will upload it back into Canva and then see what it looks like on my profile on YouTube just to make sure that it fits the aesthetic. And sometimes when I do this, when I shrink it down, I really do see problems with the thumbnail. I'll go back and fix some things and then try it again and eventually land on the final thumbnail. Then I will ask ChatGPT to help me with the title and the description. And again, I'll check these keywords in YouTube just to make sure that they're performing well. And then I will upload everything into YouTube. I will have all of the assets right there ready to go. Another thing that I'm doing while I'm editing is looking for clips that I want to use on Instagram and as short videos on YouTube. So as I'm editing, I will highlight sections that I think will work as a short form video, and I'll just keep track of them, and then I'll copy them into a new composition and I'll edit them again for clarity. I might add B-roll, I might add text on screen just to make it work in that vertical format. And then I'll export that and have that ready to go when I'm ready to promote my new episode. And then I will go into ManyChat and update the automation that I've created for my podcast. And I'll say, this episode is now live. Check it out here. I will update all of the links in the automation and make sure that everything is ready to go. And then I will share the short form clip on my Instagram and in my newsletter. And I'll know that as soon as somebody is ready to watch, everything is ready to go. And that is the workflow that I follow. All of that takes me the entire morning on Friday morning. I always think that I can get it done in an hour, and that is just never the case. Exporting on its own takes longer than we think it does, depending on your internet connection and how fast your computer is working that day. And so I've learned to build in extra time on Fridays so that I can be done by noon and then I can go enjoy the rest of my day. I'm still working week to week on my podcast. I haven't banked any episodes yet because I haven't had the time to record an extra interview, but that is the ultimate goal, that I will have interviews ready to go and I can take a couple of weeks off knowing that I have content that is pre-prepared. But I am really following this schedule every single week of scripting on Wednesday mornings, filming Wednesday afternoon, editing on Thursday, doing the final prep on Friday, and hitting publish on Friday at noon. And every week, it really does get a little bit easier, but it really is this repetitive grind of just getting this long form content out there. My goal here is not to scare you away from doing any of this work. It has been so valuable for my business to start this podcast. It has breathed new life into my business. It's something that I feel incredibly passionate and excited about. And this is what it really looks like. I also want to point out that getting this done in 24 hours for the first episode was absolutely crucial. Getting it done quickly the first time is what set the flywheel of momentum into motion. A flywheel is this really heavy rotating disc that can be hard to get into motion if you're just pushing it along yourself. But once it starts spinning, it starts to gain its own momentum. My flywheel is still gaining momentum. It's going pretty fast, but it's not at the point yet where I know it's going to continue spinning. So I'm still putting in effort to getting that flywheel going as fast as it can. If you stop the flywheel from moving, you lose all of that momentum and you have to go back to square one to get it moving again. Before the holidays, I had maybe 300 subscribers and my best video had 1,000 views. Right in the middle of the holidays, I started to gain hundreds of subscribers every day, and my videos were gaining hundreds and thousands of views every day. And my Instagram, as a result, was also growing. I could feel the flywheel gaining momentum, and I knew that this was not the time to slow down. And so I kept adding energy while I could, and now I can feel that it's moving on its own, and I'm getting to a point where I will be able to rely on this sustained energy a little bit more. This is why I'm creating this video, because I want you to know what it looks like to get the flywheel going quickly without overthinking it in a messy way. My first 3 videos did not perform very well. I only gained a few hundred followers and they only had a few hundred views. It was the fourth video where things really picked up. And imagine if I had quit after the third video and I thought, this isn't working. I'm putting in so much effort and I'm not getting anything for it. I would have missed the opportunity that was on the other side of the fourth video. And it's interesting because there's a statistic that says 90% of podcasts stop after the third episode, and almost all of the rest will quit after 20 episodes. So to be in the top 1% of podcasts, you only need to publish 21 episodes. The reason for that is that most people don't have the grit and the mindset to keep putting in all of this work when they're not seeing the results. The one thing that people struggle with the most in storytelling is consistency. You can't just tell your story one time and expect it to resonate with all of your ideal customers. It's the consistency of showing up repeatedly that has that desired effect that you're looking for in your business. And so getting this flywheel of momentum going with storytelling is what I spend the most time working on with my students. And that's why I'm being really honest and transparent about how I use my time and how I'm looking at this really hard thing that I'm doing in my business right now. And I want you to know how I'm thinking about it, how I'm working through it, and how normal it is to have moments like this in your business where something just feels a little bit too hard. If the momentum is there, keep it going and figure out a way to make it sustainable, but do not stop. It actually took me a decade to hit my stride. I actually talk about that a lot in episode 1. So if you haven't listened to that one, I'll link it here. But I learned all of these skills over a long period of time, often when it didn't make any sense and nobody really knew why I was doing what I was doing, including myself. It has only been in the past 9 or 10 months when everything has really come together and I can see how all of the effort that I've put in throughout my adult life is adding up to something. And my business is still small compared to many people. There is so much more momentum to gain in so many different areas of my business, but my wheel is spinning now and there is no way that I'm going to let it stop. I hope that you've enjoyed this episode of That Storytelling Podcast and you feel inspired to get the momentum going in your own business and to start telling your story consistently. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a 5-star review on Spotify. It's the easiest way to help this channel grow. And if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe and don't forget to hit the little bell notification so that you never miss an episode. Regardless of where you're watching or listening, please leave a comment and let me know which part of this episode stood out to you the most and where are you looking to build momentum in your business this year. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I appreciate all of you so much. I'll see you next Friday. Have a great week. Oh, and if you're looking for more storytelling tips that you can use in your business today, check out this video with 7 tips to start building a business with storytelling. It is so full of value. Be prepared to take notes and implement some of these tips right away. I can't wait to hear what you think.